Alright YouTube, what is going on? It is ConflctNerd here today, bringing you the final episode of my Transport Fever Let's Play, Let's Connect Up the Grand Canyon. So I've done a lot in between this and the last episode. This episode's mainly going to be talking. It's not going to be really, we're going to do a little bit here and there of tweaking lines and all that sort of stuff, but it's mainly just actually going to be talking throughout this episode, and there's reasons why. So first of all, we're in Richardson, and there's a train station in Richardson. That's very strange, and this really, I wanted to just go ahead and build something, and I spent a lot of time off camera the past few days. This episode is maybe an hour or two late. I do apologise about that. I've also had audio driver issues as well, which is really unfortunate, and frame rate issues, as you see, which we'll talk about later. But I was like, you know what, this whole valley, this whole area is just, it's a bottleneck. It really is a bottleneck, and I was like, I need to go ahead and build a railway line in between Boulder, Richardson, Tejada, Willow Creek, and Castle Rock landed up coming into the equation just because it worked out. But these four towns, they really needed a little bit of extra support, and the best way to move people between towns is by trains. We know that. Buses do well to a degree, but then at the end of the day, they just land up, like, look how busy this road is, for example. All these buses are full. It's just a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. I'm going to slow this game down because it's really struggling to record in a certain frame rate. But in general anyway, trains are the most effective, and that's why I went ahead and built this line and off camera, just because things were very, very difficult to do with the low frame rate and me recording. So I'm just going to go over what I've actually built. So I've gone ahead and built a loop, which is basically the Boulder left loop and the Boulder right loop. Basically it's just one large loop and one lane, or line I guess you could say, going one way and one going the other way. Pretty simple stuff just to go ahead and support, as I said, the busy area. There could be multiple of these throughout the map, honestly, but I think this was the most important one, especially with Boulder being Boulder itself. And as we can see, 4,300, which will come onto statistics a lot at the end, but I just want to go ahead and start off by going over this line. So the first thing was I decided to get rid of this tunnel here and make it a little bit more open. There used to be a tunnel here, you couldn't actually see this road previously. Reasons for, just because of the terrain. I didn't like how the airport was sort of like, I felt it was sort of wedged in, and it still does look wedged in, but it looks like it was awkwardly sort of on a peninsula sort of thing, whereas now I've cut the hill back a bit, you can see the road at this side, it works out a little bit better. And also Boulder has a train station, which in general has, I think, anyway, I mean, it's difficult to say if it's helped things out. I think it has, and it's good to have that extra transport connection. There's a lot more cars on the roads, but at the same time, there might have been a lot of cars anyway, I just couldn't see them before. Also, Boulder's expanding in any way possible, so people are building houses along here, which isn't optimal at all. However, it is something which was going to happen as soon as I allowed for flat land, and this is probably contributing to the traffic as well. Anyway, so we have a Boulder station here. This comes along here, then goes through a large tunnel, and just with the way Richardson is, it had to be a tunnel. And then you come into the Richardson station, which we started off with at the start of the episode, which is here, and this station in general has done really well as well. Actually, for this line, I'll talk about the frequency of the line, but it was very important that it was very high, just because of the fact that these towns are just so large. They've all got a population, I believe, over 2,500, so it was really a necessity. Then it comes up here to Tejada, and ideally I probably would have wanted it to go into the current train station. However, there's a lot of issues with that, and you can see green trains there. I'll talk about that in a second as well. I had to go ahead, and because it's such a sharp incline, we'll go ahead and actually look at the track here. It sort of weaves in throughout the mountain, as you can see now, and not ideal at all, but just because of the height difference in Richardson to Tejada, it meant that I had to go ahead and create a second station in Tejada, which works out not too bad because it serves different areas of town. I was wanting it more to be roughly in the centre of my screen where my mouse is right now. However, it landed up being at this end of this town, so it works out, it serves different areas of the town. However, it would have been better to have it at the complete opposite. However, that just wasn't possible just due to the difference in height, really, to be honest. But it's in here and it does work out quite well. It gets supported by a bus stop just down here, which I could probably go ahead and change in the future if I wanted to, but it's working out quite well, helping out with Tejada. And as we know, Tejada I think is our second biggest city, over 4,000 people living there. The line then comes up here, and this is the only station which actually connects up with our other current line at the side of the map, the Tejada Ranch line, or Tejada Goldtown, or Meadows Goldtown line, actually, come to think about it. These two, I just decided to upgrade the station, add in 2 more platforms, but the lines do not cross at all, just to go ahead and make sure Transport Fever's AI didn't decide to go ahead and muck things up. So it comes into here, so this is an extremely busy station, as it's basically sort of the transport or transfer station, I guess you could see. So that is, this makes this station very busy, and you're always going to see a lot of people here. You then leave the station, and again you sort of follow the curve which you would to go along to Silverton. However, this time again it had to be, it's quite a big height drop, to be honest, so we sort of weave down and then we come into the north end of Willow Creek. So there's a station up here, just because I thought, you know what, it's going to be easy enough to do. There's then another station in Willow Creek, which this one is a much more central one. It's closer to the bus station, so people tend to seem to walk from the bus station to the train station, which is good. And then we've actually got a third station in Willow Creek. We've got Lower, and the reason for this is because Willow Creek is very long, but it's not very wide, so it can really go ahead and support 3 stations, no problem at all. So it's got a lower one here as well, which works out quite nicely. Then finally, along with that, we come back down, so we're back into the Boulder Valley. We've got a station up here which is close to the, I guess, upper Boulder bus station, tram station, whatever you want to call it. And these two really do accommodate each other. You can see the amount of people walking along the path in between these two, and as we know, Upper Boulder's always been a bit of a clusterfuck, to be honest. We can see that things are moving relatively smoothly here anyway. We're just starting to get major game performance issues, which I'm about to touch on in a second. If I go ahead and check out roads, or let's go all actually, you can see that things are sort of split between multiple different platforms, but at the same time there's just a bit of a queue, which is, it's a real shame, to be honest, and there's a lot of people waiting here, 192, which for a bus and tram station is a lot. Then finally it makes its way through a tunnel here and then comes back out here into, I guess, what you call Lower Boulder, or this is Boulder Bayside, sorry, so it's really like Boulder Bayside train station in Boulder, trying to sort of team up the bus stations with train stations, and it actually has worked out really well in the end. Now, I have gone ahead and, since the last episode, probably gone forward about 25-30 years, honestly. We're into 2106 now, so a long time has passed, and we can start to see huge skyscrapers. If we go ahead and change this view here, you can see that some buildings are absolutely massive. So that building alone hosts 154 residents, so it's definitely, this is why this line was required, because people were getting so densely packed together where they were living. It meant that going ahead and providing one bus which could hold 40 was just not working out anymore, and that was another reason why I went ahead and built the line. So once the line was built, that was great. You know, it's going to go ahead and improve fluidity in between the towns, just hopefully make transport better. Now, there's no real claim I can back that up with, but as we can see here, we've got a frequency of 100 seconds roughly, which was so vital to this project. So having this frequency, I had to go ahead and choose these trains here. It's the trains that we've sort of been using throughout the whole game. There are 144 seats, I believe the French National Rail, one of their trains that they primarily use. And the reason was because I had to go ahead, and as you can see, this station here is only 160 meters long. Not that long at all. I was limited just because of these towns that I built and had grown so much. I had to go ahead, and I couldn't go ahead and deploy like 320 meter stations, and I think the best example of this actually is in Richardson here. We can see that this station, it's sort of just wedged in. I can maybe, I really couldn't, to be honest. Nah, I could possibly actually get a 240 in here, to be honest. However, it was just difficult, and that's why I had to go ahead, and that was one of the real constraints of going ahead and building this line, was getting effective train stations in. That was the real issue I found, and that's why it took a long time to create, and that's why a lot of it was done off camera, because it was so much start, stop, start, stop. And it did take me a good half an hour probably to create the line. Also with all the signals as well in the tunnels, it was just an absolutely nightmare. So some towns do get a real benefit, some towns don't get as much. For example, Richardson, it's just the way Richardson's built. Again, it's sort of this railway line sort of crosses through the up and down valley, so it's not very effective. If the line was to go a little bit different and go up and down the valley, that would work out better, I think, but at the end of the day we still have a station here, but I don't think Richardson is served as well as it could be by this railway line than that it really could, to be honest. If we go up to Willow Creek, I think Willow Creek has probably benefited the most because it has 3 stations, because the line goes down the valley, whereas Willow Creek also goes down the valley, so they sort of complement each other. It's meant that bus stops in general in this town, they're much quieter than they were. Don't get me wrong, there is still, for example, 35 people waiting there, but at times we've had like 135 people waiting there. So the train does definitely take a lot of pressure off the just general transport in this town. Again, accommodating that frequency, we've got a lot of trains on each side as well, so there's possibly, I mean, I could go ahead and add in more, to be honest. They're not all full though, so I'm not going to go ahead at the time being anyway, but it does work out and I'm really happy with it, and it is giving me, I'm not really too worried about the profit. I'd happily actually go ahead and allow it to happen even if it was at a loss, just because it's such a, you know, reliever of people, it's a reliever of just all the mess that's going on, literally. So I would happily go ahead and run it even if it was making a loss. Not too large a loss, but you know what I mean, a loss. And I'm glad it is making a profit, though. It's only about roughly between 10 and 20 million, but it'll do, and it sort of covers the cost of just actually going ahead and building everything, because it was a really expensive line to build just because of all the tunnels, i.e. this tunnel here, for example, quite a long tunnel, then a bridge, then another tunnel, so very busy, and all these trains as well definitely cost me a lot of money, even though I have like $2 billion. So along with that, there was a lot of pressure being put on the other railway line here, and this is the one which goes from Meadows all the way to Goldtown. They were again using the exact same trains which we were trying to use, and I mean, the French National Carrier trains are good. They've got 144 seats, however, they were always full, and I kept on adding more and more into the line, but I was like, this is not as effective as it could be. So I decided to go ahead and upgrade to these, which is the TFV medium, I believe, so they can carry 187 people and they can go at quite some speed. So decided to colour them in green actually, which, you know, it's quite unique, I guess you could say, but this is them here. So you would have all seen these trains. These are probably some of the most common trains in the game. They are actually a vanilla train in the game as well, which is pretty cool. And actually, is it a vanilla train? Not 100% sure if it is, but nonetheless, it does the job really effectively on this line. And if we go ahead and scroll down here, it's making probably less profit than it was. It's making about a 30 million profit. Frequency again of about every 100 seconds, which is sort of ideal for a train. However, there's 20 of these trains on this line, and the reason is because this line goes for a very long distance. So you've got Meadows, you've got Tajada, which is 2, Castle Rock, which is 3, Silverton, which is 4, Thompson, which is 5, we've got Apache Ranch, which is 6, Goldtown, which is 7, and to be honest, if I was to be continuing the series past this episode, it would have another station, because the way Glenwood's built, it's really strange. Actually, some of it's down in the valley, but it's now gone ahead and started to build up on the tops here, so I would probably have the train ending at this station here, and then it could actually possibly loop back around to Thompson over in the far distance at the top of my screen. That is not going to happen though, and that's really going to bring me on to my next point of this video. So, if we go ahead and just look at any town, all the towns are really busy, and the problem is this though, literally it's the frame rate. Now, I'm recording at 30 frames per second, and I've basically touched on this quite a few times in the series, to be honest. The game is unoptimized to a very high level. Now, when the game first came out, it was even worse. And I think it was maybe around about December, or maybe end of November, start of December, they brought in an optimization update which went ahead and basically, in simple terms, if you go ahead and put stuff into algorithms, and generally it makes stuff run better. But because this game, a lot of it is still unoptimized, then there's so much going on in this map. Think about how much is going on. Think about how many, for example, just my stuff. Think about how many trains are moving, which they're dropping off people. Think about how many buses are moving, boats, airplanes. You know, we've got all that sort of stuff to consider. Then that's just my stuff. You've then actually got the game AI itself, so you've got other people moving around, you've got towns. You've just got so much going on, which this game is, I love this game so much, and it's a real shame to see it like this. And I do get a little bit mad, to be honest. I do get a little bit mad at the game creators, because I just want to play this game. I want to continue playing this map on and on, but I just physically cannot because of the constraints of the unoptimized game. Literally, it's just it's so difficult to build on. That's really the bottom line. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm moaning too much at the game, because it's a game I absolutely love, but it's just because I care about it so much, and everyone's really enjoyed this series on YouTube. I do want to come back to this series, but when the game gets optimized, and again I'll talk about that probably at the end of the video. The one thing that I'm not happy with is I go ahead and follow the Transport Fever sort of social media and also check their website, but there's really just not a lot of talk from the developers. It's a real shame. They're not really talking about what they're working on right now. They're not like Jagex, which is, they're probably one of the best development companies going, I would say. So they go ahead and create the game RuneScape, which if you don't know, I have a RuneScape channel and I make a lot of RuneScape content on. That's how I got into the ConflctNerd family, and they have like development diaries. They're talking every single week what they're going to be working on, both on Old School and RuneScape 3. They have live streams every week, basically Q&As with the players just going ahead and I guess just ironing stuff out and just working on stuff together, which is great. It's not, for example, like a studio like Activision where everything is kept private and it's all down to the developers and the players get no say. That's why I think RuneScape is such a great game, because you get to have an input, you get to have a say. And Transport Fever, understandably, yes, it's not created by a company like Jagex, which has like 200, 300 employees, has lots of money behind it. It is limited in resources, I do understand that, but at least some communication between the development team and the community would be great, because I think a lot of mods and that sort of stuff are limited because of this, and I think people are playing this game quite a bit, but then they get to this bottleneck stage which I'm at right now, and then they're just sort of, in a sense, just not wanting to continue to play it because they're not seeing support for it, and they're not also getting to get past the problems which are sort of just constantly here. Anyway, that is that ramble over. I'm going to leave it for the time being. I really do want to come back and play this map, however, it's just really difficult. I mean, the times that I'm going around right now, I'm sort of just bouncing off places. There's just so much to do in this map as well, which there's so much more I could add in, and that is the thing that really sort of makes me upset, to be honest, because I've got so many possibilities. But you can see right now, for example, prime example, we're coming into Boulder. I can't just ignore Boulder. I mean, there's no way I can get away without visiting Boulder a lot, and as you can see, everything is just so sluggy and so... it's not good. That's the bottom line, it's not good. So what is the future for me in Transport Fever then? Well, Transport Fever is going to be continuing, but I'm going to go ahead and I guess just keep the constraints in mind. That's the bottom line. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just try and let's do something different for once. I don't know how actually this is going to be on frame rate, but let's just jump into the actual train's first person view. So what I want to do going forward from now is I want to come back to the series, as I said, when it becomes re-optimized. There's still at least another 25, 30, 40. I could get so many episodes out of this, honestly, and I really want to, so we will come back to this at some stage along the lines when this game gets updated. However, for the time being, I'm going to take a break from Transport Fever for probably about 5 days to a week, so it's not going to be a long break at all. I want to play Raft and also want to finish off my Cities Skylines Let's Play, or put it on hold. I want to record about 3 more episodes of that up to episode 10, then it's going to go on sort of a break for a while, just because as much as I like that game, I think I need to learn about it a little bit more, to be honest, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. Then I'm going to play Raft for probably about 2 or 3 episodes, then there's going to be a ConflctNerd Family video, then we're going to go ahead and get back to Transport Fever, so it's only going to be a week. So I realise a lot of people have subscribed just for Transport Fever, and thank you for that. It's not going away, do not worry. I love this game so much, even though I have just slagged it off, I slag it off because I love it so much, if you know what I mean. And trains, all just transport stuff is so up my street. It always has been, always will be, and I think that's one thing which I love about City Builders, and also a bit like Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. I always wanted to go ahead and work on the transport aspects. In Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, it was going ahead and working on the monorail, for example, or the steam railway. That was one of the most fun parts, to be honest, even more exciting than the roller coasters. So the next map that I think I'm going to go ahead and do is probably a Scottish map, and I'm going to go ahead and I want to do that because it relates to me, so I can go ahead and teach people about Scotland and the geography of Scotland and just give people information about it, because I'm really proud to be Scottish. I wouldn't classify myself as British, never have and never will. I am very proud. I'm just proud to be Scottish, to be honest, so I'll leave it at that before I go into absolute rant and freedom and all that sort of stuff. But I want to educate people about Scotland. I really enjoyed, for example, with Liechtenstein, I really enjoyed learning about Liechtenstein, and I have a strong interest in geography, to be honest, and with learning all those facts and learning about Liechtenstein, I was like, well, why don't I go ahead and do this with Scotland, because I know a lot about Scotland, and a lot of people see Scotland in the world as, you know, people who wear kilts and people who, you know, toss the caber and eat oats and that sort of stuff, and to a very small degree that's true, but there's so much more to Scotland behind the stereotypes, and I do want to go ahead and share that in a future series. So I've got a map of Scotland, and the Transport Fever map isn't the best, to be honest, so it's actually probably going to be quite a short series of about 10 episodes, but that's going to allow me to get, I guess, introduced into cargo, which is something that I've still not done in this game even after 2 series, so that's something which we're going to go ahead and do, and a lot of people have been asking for that, so cargo is coming in the next series in about a week's time, do not worry. And then after that I want to jump back into a big map, probably a sort of just grasslands European map, or just something different which is quite large again but quite flat, and go ahead and see what we can do with cargo to a little bit more of a higher extent, if you will. Anyway, that is that total ramble over, so we're going to go ahead and actually just review this map, because I'm not really going to get too much more building done, to be honest. I could go ahead and do 1 or 2 minor changes, but it's not really going to have that much of effect. I feel that I am actually pretty much done with this. There's a lot of bottlenecks, as we can see here when we get to Silverton once the game decides to cooperate. There we go. Silverton, and just many other towns as well, are like this, to be honest. There's a lot of work, so if I was to come back to this, we'd have to do a lot of work, but I'm really happy to do that because it's something which I want to go ahead and master. And the reason I've loved Transport Fever is because it's like you get to go ahead and create your own transport empire in a sense and try and master towns, which is something which, as a sort of management game player, I really enjoy. So let's go ahead and start off with just the money, and I always do this at the end of the series actually, I don't just say that's it, goodbye. Overall money, we've done exceptionally well. This series is on easy, so I was always expecting to do well on the money. However, in the next series I'll probably do medium to give myself a bit of a challenge. But at the same time, I always like to have money so I can go ahead and build pretty much whatever I want without any constraints. But as we can see there, that works. I mean, having that amount of money just works great, because it has allowed me to go ahead and build like epic bridges which cost 300 million and just not have to worry about money at all. Aside from that, let's go ahead and look at actually how everything is doing on the rail front. So the new loop that I created, the Boulder loop, is overall doing great. It's up to about 28 million there. Our other loop at the other side of the map, which we worked on in the last episode, that is up now at near enough 60 million, which is pretty insane. And then as we can see, the Tejada Ranch, or I guess you could say the Meadows to Goldtown, that is all the way now at over 40 million. And I reckon that could continue to go up as well, which is pretty insane. The next thing is road vehicles. Now road vehicles, I've really not built much buses recently because buses have sort of just, to be honest, they've sort of just come redundant. The reason for that is because they just get so packed and so full. Every place, even Eagle Creek for example, is getting loads and loads of people queuing up to just leave this town, and this town's grown a lot actually. It had under 100 people, or it had just over 100 people last time I checked, so it's really grown. And you can see this road up the top here as well. This really wasn't here before, but people have gone ahead and built on it. So buses is something, as I said, I've not touched on for a long time, but they basically just built up the pot of money to go ahead and allow to do all the epic train building stuff. But as we can see, we've got so many lines in the profit. I think everything's near enough in the profit, but a lot of them are in the millions as well. We've actually got a negative here, Miller to, oh that's interesting actually. Let's very quickly go up there. So we go up to Miller Camp and Port, which is all the way over, yeah, the game just shat itself there. It's over here. This is actually, I mean, Jesus. Miller Camp has grown a lot, and I mean a lot. How big are you? 600 people, Jesus. I would say though that I'm kind of surprised at that, to be honest. It is one of our newer lines, and it is supported by a boat, but in general, let's not focus on the negatives, let's focus on the positives. For example, the Meadows to Jeddah, that's at like a profit of 5 million, which is pretty insane. Richardson to Jeddah is now making a loss. I can see why, because there's actually now all these buses aren't as full, a lot of them are actually empty. You can see if we very quickly jump to here, you can see that the bus station here is having issues, which is understandable, but also there's a railway line in between the two now, so I guess it sort of defeats the purpose. A little bit of the buses, I'd always keep buses and trains going. A lot of people say go ahead and delete the bus lines, but at the same time, the bus is allowed to go around, I guess, suburban parts of the town, whereas obviously trains, you can only get off at the train station, you can't just jump off the train halfway along, so it doesn't really work too well. So I like to have both and complement each other if they can, which This really doesn't, but it's just because the line is new, and if I was to continue on, I would go ahead and probably readjust the bus stops. The rest of the buses though in general are doing quite well. We have some losses, but they're really not that bad losses, and we've actually in general managed to get connects to work really well. Connects are not the money makers, and I think if we go up towards Ranch, actually it's the best example. It just gets people around the city. Boulder's a bit of an exception because we've tried trams, and we'll come on to trams in a second. They have worked really well, but in general, in Wards Ranch, it just takes people from the bus station, which is at one end of the town, right down to the dock at the other end of the town, and it works out really well. And it's something which I always sort of struggled with in previous series, but I think I've really nailed the head on the coffin there. That is definitely not the same, but it's something like that anyway. And then we come into here. We've got trams are varying in profit, to be honest. The Boulder situation is a bit of an interesting one, as we know, but they are all on their profit. We got the Boulder Bayside making a loss, even though I'm pretty sure every single bus is chock-a-block full. However, I believe it's just to do with traffic and the certain bus stops and bus stations which are causing us to lose money there. Into the air, we've not actually been too successful on this one, to be honest, and it's something which I've sort of neglected just because of the fact that air travel in general, I think you just need more people for. For example, if we go ahead and look at some routes which I think could be very popular, Silverton to Tajada Ranch, or not Tajada Ranch, to Tajada Richardson even, that is now actually going ahead, and there's a railway line in between that, so there's no need for that really. Boulder to Arvada, that one is a surprise actually, and I'm surprised Boulder is not taking off as much as it has. There is people waiting, but I think it's just because of the problems in with Boulder, i.e. the Boulder airport bus goes into this station here, as we can see here. A lot of people waiting here, 167 people waiting to go on that airport bus, but there's just not the room really, so that's why those two I would say are in the negative. The other two are in the positive though, not greatly, but they are in the positive, which is nice to see. One thing that has done amazingly though is the boats. The boats have done exceptionally well. Not really at all sure why. Again, this was something new I did in this series, and it just worked. I think one of the things about this map is the reason I chose it again was because of the constraints on the landscape. The landscape and the mountains, it sort of was very difficult to connect up some towns. Most towns are connected up, but for example from Red Cliffs to Salt Creek, like Salt Creek is only connected up by one of my transport routes only to Greenley, I believe, and it's not linked up any other way other than boat. And because boat works, because there's this river which is nice and flat, whereas if it was to go ahead and do a road route, then it would be over awful terrain. It's not going to be exactly very efficient, I don't think, and that's why boats really do work well on this map. So boats have done surprisingly well. Again, I don't know if it's just because of this map, but I'll definitely be using them in the future. And that is pretty much it, to be honest, actually rounding all that up. One thing I do want to do before we end this though is I want to go ahead and see what we are doing with all the cities. So by that I mean population, so go ahead and just filtering this through. We've got 5 towns under 1,000 people, and these were pretty much the last 5 towns to go ahead and connect up to the grid. Flip this on its head though, we can see that we've got 4 towns over 4,000 people, and one of them is Silverton actually, which I think that really helped going ahead and putting that train station in when we did, and I think that's why it has, that line is up at like what, 40 million profit or something pretty insane anyway, and all these trains are doing so well because they all have at least over 100 people on them. If not, they're full, to be honest. That one there is near enough full, which is nice to see. The reason is though, we do have 20 trains on that line, and yet I feel I could still go ahead and put more on there. If we very quickly just scroll down and have a look, so yeah, 44 million now, which is pretty cool. Bar that though, the amount of towns which we've got, just look at the amount of people on this map. Like, I don't think it gives you a total counter of the amount of people, but it is something insane. And I can remember when these places were like tiny wee villages with like 100 people. Now they've got thousands of thousands. Now they've got skyscrapers like this. That skyscraper, that residential building holds 127 people, which is pretty insane. So again, it would have been nice maybe to go ahead and put in cargo, like shopping facilities and jobs, because they would complement each other. However, could you imagine the frame rate? Like, we wouldn't have got to this stage in the series with that constraint. We really wouldn't have. And again, that was another reason why I sort of chose this map. And I think in the next series anyway, the Scotland series, the map's going to be interesting because it's actually quite a small map, but we'll talk about that when we actually get onto that series. But what I'm going to do there is I'm going to wrap this up. and end the series here. As I said, for the time being, may come back in the future, it may not come back in the future, really just depends on the game developers and see really what they go ahead and do with this game, because of course I'd like to see it optimised, and I'm sure they would as well, but I don't know if they're dealing with constraints of maybe they don't know how to do it, or for example, hardware, that sort of stuff, because I've seen people in forums and I've really looked hard to go ahead and try and find a solution to all this sort of low FPS. It's not anyone's computer, trust me, it's really not, because I'm seeing guys with like 128GB of RAM and they're getting low frame rate issues, so it's basically the game, and hopefully that'll get sorted in the near future. Anyway, that's all for this video. I can't believe I'm leaving this series. I've enjoyed it so much and it's literally made my channel, literally it has gone ahead and allowed me to get partnership. It's allowed me to get over 1,000 views every 2 days now, which is just something which I thought would take a lot longer to achieve. Now that Transport Fever is disappearing though, I'm a bit worried that my view count is going to drop, to be honest, just because of the fact that a lot of people are subscribing for Transport Fever, but as I said, do not worry, it will be back in roughly a week's time. Anyway, that's all for this video, so thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, rating, subscribe if you are new around here. As this is the end of the series, there is a playlist on screen, which go ahead and if you want to just restart the series, honestly do that, because the quality has been, I would say, pretty good throughout, and if you've missed anything, go ahead and watch it again, honestly, because I think it's probably one of the best series I've actually produced. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. My name is ConflctNerd Callum, and goodbye.